Welcome everyone to the EU-ROK Maritime Security Cooperation Forum. My name is Claudia Lee and I am a Korean English interpreter. I have been virtually assisting Kim's online events throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, but today, finally, I'm here at this event where all the guests of honor are gracing this occasion with their presence. It is my true honor and pleasure to serve as your MC today. The EU-ROK Maritime Security Cooperation Forum is an inaugural event between the European Union and the Republic of Korea that brings together practitioners and experts to discuss areas of collaboration in maritime security. This event is jointly hosted by the Korea Institute for Maritime Strategy and also the French Embassy to the Republic of Korea, and is also supported by the EU's ESIWA project, which stands for Enhancing Security Cooperation in and with Asia. Thank you once again, distinguished guests, for your participation in this event, and also to the audience who's joining us and watching us online. First and foremost, let's begin with the opening remarks from the French ambassador to Korea, His Excellency, Mr. Philippe Lefort. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a welcoming round of applause.
네, 오신 여러분 감사합니다. Thank you very much to all. First to Admiral Jong Sung-kyun. Merci, mesdames et messieurs les officiers.
Distinguished officers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I have a pleasure to welcome you all to the first EU-ROK Maritime Security Cooperation Forum. This forum, as you all know, comes at a particular and also difficult time. We're witnessing in Europe the tragic return of war. In this terrible context, the European Union, of which France currently chairs the Council, has equipped itself with a strategic compass. This ambitious action plan will enable the EU to strengthen its ability to act in the face of threats and challenges, particularly in the maritime area. Maritime security is a major issue of this century. Our oceans are subject to increasing challenges, such as strategic competition, questioning of the freedom of navigation, and of an order based on rules, crime, pollution, but also the erosion of biodiversity. The European Union has been aware of these challenges for a long time. Since the adoption in 2014 of its maritime security strategy, it has become a recognized provider of maritime security through monitoring missions and numerous initiatives and capacity building programs. In addition, several of its member states have, it should be emphasized, naval air resources or protection capabilities. I believe there are two errors of perspective that we find very often in some analysis to avoid. The first would be to oppose security and defense, neglecting the first and taking into consideration only high-intensity combat capabilities. Admittedly, there is, in any strategy question, an inevitable logic of means, but it is also necessary to take into account the continuity between security and defense. In the maritime space, an unaddressed, neglected issue of security can become, whatever its nature, in the long term, a source of military conflict. Protecting the security of maritime spaces also means protecting peace. This second would consist in considering only local balances, not taking into account the fact that the global ocean is by definition a space of mobility and projection. Some of you will perhaps rightly mention the lack of permanent means of European states in the Indo-Pacific zone to relativize the potential role of Europe in the balance of power. Suffice it to recall that it only takes less than 30 days to deploy the French carrier strike group again around the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier from the Mediterranean or Atlantic theater to Southeast Asia. So again, the French carrier strike group is already the 10 vessels submarine. So I hope that today's forum will give you the opportunity to learn more about the diversity of European means in terms of maritime
Qu'il s'agisse de nations
security, including the member states, whether they are maritime nations such as France and the Netherlands, or not, like
la République tchèque.
the countries which are more open to the seas, like Czech Republic. For France in particular, maritime security is a major challenge. Our 20,000 kilometers of coastline stretch over several oceans, such as the Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific, and our exclusive economic zone is around 10 million square kilometers large. This is why we're engaged in many places around the world to respond to threats at sea, to environmental challenges, and to contribute to the reduction of tensions. I'm thinking of the Arab-Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Guinea, and which is the home to pirate activities, and the Somali coasts. We're present in various forums involved in its themes in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. The French Indo-Pacific strategy adopted in 2018 to promote an inclusive space based on law and multilateralism also includes an important maritime component. So when it comes to maritime security, cooperation is essential. In this regard, the Republic of Korea appears to be an indispensable partner for the European Union and its member states. We already do a lot together, but I'm convinced that we can go even further from now. And I hope that today's meeting will open a new path for the discussions, which will be a lot more profound than now. I thank our core organizers from the Korean Institute of Maritime Strategy, KIMS, and in particular Captain Chung Sang-man and his team, Dr. Park Jung-hyun and Mr. Kang Sung-mo. And I also thank the delegation of the European Union, which supported this project. And finally, last but not least, I must say that this forum was able to see the light of day thanks to the European SUR project, Benoît Semur. And I would like to thank once again in charge of maritime security for their constant support and for being here with us today. I wish you all fruitful exchanges. Thank you.
For opening up today's event with your warm and kind words. We truly appreciate it. And now let's hear opening remarks from the chairman of the Korea Institute for Maritime Strategy, Mr. Chung Ui-sung. Ladies and gentlemen, again, let's give him a welcoming round of applause.
Thank you for your warm and kind introduction. Ambassador LeFort, distinguished speakers and guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this very special event of ROK and EU Joint Maritime Strategy Initiative. As a matter of fact, this is a very important event. The significance of the Indo-Pacific Oceans cannot be sufficiently emphasized, since the GDP of the countries in the Indo-Pacific region occupies 60% of entire world GDP. According to the IMO report, over 90% of the world trade is carried by sea, and more than 50% of the world trade passes through the Indo-Pacific Ocean. The peace and prosperity of both South Korea and the European Union deeply rely on Indo-Pacific sea lanes. It is therefore crucial that we cherish and protect the two oceans. I believe that this is one of the reasons why last year the European Union released a strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific and expressed the desire to work with like-minded partners in the region. Likewise, the South Korean president-elect has last month disclosed his intention to send a special envoy to the European Union. Both South Korea and the European Union have thus expressed the shared interest and determination to work closely together in the maritime domain in this vital part of the world. This event is a manifestation of the steady progresses. Today, we have gathered here for the frank exchange of opinions with the purpose of enhancing better understanding. This will help us identify specific questions which need to be carefully reviewed and worked out in due course. Between South Korea and the European Union, indeed, there have been progresses of mutual agreements highlighting ever-deepening strategic partnership. Those are the ROK EU Free Trade Agreement, Framework Agreement, and Crisis Management Participation Agreement. Those agreements are the departure points upon which future conversations will be built. Through such dialogues, I am confident that South Korea and the European Union will certainly enhance peace and prosperity for the benefit of all parties concerned. Thank you to all panelists and those who worked diligently and patiently to make this event happen. I would especially like to acknowledge Colonel Cyril Dupont and Mrs. Sandra Cohen from the Embassy of France and Kim's staff members for working hard in the preparation of this forum. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you for your great welcoming remarks, and thank you for emphasizing the importance of ROK and EU partnership in the Indo-Pacific region's security alliance. And next, we will hear congratulatory remarks from the Ambassador for International Security Affairs, His Excellency, Mr. Lee Chung-myan. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome him with a big hand.
예, 안녕하십니까. 방금
Good morning and good afternoon. As just introduced, I am Chung-myan Lee, Ambassador for International Security Affairs from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Ministry of Foreign Affairs. 오늘 한국해양전략연구소와 주한 프랑스
Today, I would like to congratulate the KIMS, the Korea Institute for Maritime Security, and the French Embassy in Korea for hosting EU-ROK Maritime Security Cooperation Forum. This forum is held by the ROK and the EU to seek mutual understanding and cooperation on maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. At the end of February last year, we had a meeting with Ambassador Fernandez of the EU delegation to Korea. And at that meeting, we discussed the usefulness and the possible areas of SGWA, enhancing security cooperation in and with Asia, and more than a year has already passed. I would like to express my gratitude to Your Excellency Philippe Laporte, French Ambassador to Korea, and Gustavo Slamashka, the Ambassador from Czech Republic, and Lee Seung Chung of KIMS, and Vice Admiral Seung Yun Chung, and all those who are in charge of the European Union's SGWA program, and all those who have made this prestigious forum possible. And I would also like to express my gratitude to the presenters from both sides for sharing your knowledge and experiences to promote mutual understanding at this forum. And also the participants from the diplomatic missions to Korea, as well as the officials from the Ministry of National Defense and the Navy who attended with sincere interest. The Chairman, Lee Seung Chung, and His Excellency, the French Ambassador to ROK, the Philippe report mentioned that Indo-Pacific has been serving as the bridge connecting Asia with the outside world. Asian countries, including Korea, have achieved political and economic development through exchanges with Europe and America through the sea. So it would not be wrong to say that for Asia's growth and prosperity, stability and peace in the Indo-Pacific is crucial. Meanwhile, the concept of security is expanding worldwide in many ways. As mentioned by His Excellency Philip Report, we should go beyond security, and the concept of security will be expanding merely the security, the health security, environmental security, and the cyber security. And these are the new form of security that are being unfolded in this new era. So in the maritime security, the concept is being expanded as well. Under these circumstances, we're all aware that there are transnational and non-military threats that are difficult for a single state to respond. Thus, participation and cooperation of multiple countries is a prerequisite for sustaining stability and peace of the sea. European Union has published the Indo-Pacific strategy, and the member states have been participating in activities for regional stability. And these activities have given us many implications. Now, I believe it is time for us to think deeply about how Europe and Asian countries set the direction of cooperation for maritime security together. However, cooperation for maritime security requires advanced preparation because countries have different capacities and conditions. Thus, we need to create the level and the form of cooperation through exchanges and dialogue. And it's necessary, thus, to understand the situations, roles, and the capabilities of each partner country and seek areas where mutual cooperation is possible. Today's forum is meaningful in this aspect. Korea and EU have already carried out various types of cooperation in various fields, and I believe this will make this preparation easier. I'm confident that opinions from today's presentation and discussion will serve as a cornerstone and will further develop concrete content on maritime security in the Pacific in the future. Once again, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Chairman Ui-Seung Jung of KIMS and Your Excellency Philip Report and the Czech ambassador and Vice Admiral Sung-Gyun Jung and all the other distinguished guests from home and abroad for being here with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing the progress between the partnership of EU and ROK, and also the emphasizing the importance of security beyond defense. Thank you very much. And now we'll begin a very special 2 keynote speeches delivered by the EU side and also the ROK side. And the first one is going to be covered from the Senior Military Advisor to the Managing Director for CSDP and Crisis Response, European External Action Service, Rear Admiral Jürgen Ele, on the EU and maritime security. Ladies and gentlemen, let's invite him with a big hand.
Ambassador, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, bonjour à tous and good morning from Europe. I would like to thank the French Embassy in Seoul and the Korea Institute for Maritime Strategy for having invited the European Union and for giving me the opportunity to deliver a speech at this very important forum. Ladies and gentlemen, the security of seas and oceans is a clear priority for the EU and its member states. It is a prerequisite for all types of maritime activities, and it also allows us to take measures to safeguard the marine environment. The EU therefore has a strategic interest in identifying and addressing risks and threats to maritime security, both within and beyond the EU's maritime areas. This led the EU to adopt in 2014 the EU Maritime Security Strategy and an action plan supporting its implementation. The strategy defines the EU's strategic interests in the maritime domain, namely peace and security, a rule-based order at sea, including freedom of navigation, fight against irregular migration, protection of critical infrastructure, including ports, offshore drilling platforms, underwater cables, protection of the marine environment, and preparations for the consequences of climate change. The EU Maritime Security Strategy and its action plan seek to protect the EU's global maritime interests and promote the EU as a strong contributor to global maritime security by strengthening the link between internal and external security and combining European security with international maritime governance. The EU Maritime Security Strategy and its action plan are based on the following four guiding principles. First, a cross-sectoral approach to promote wide cooperation between military and civilian maritime authorities, EU agencies, and all sectors of the shipping and maritime industry. Second, functional integrity to build on existing mandates, responsibilities, and competences without changes or additions, focusing on what can be better achieved by working together. Third, respect for international rules and principles to promote a rules-based good governance at sea and the settlement of maritime disputes according to the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And finally, maritime multilateralism to promote better cooperation with international organizations, third countries, and private stakeholders, adopting a coherent and single voice. The EU intends to update its maritime security policy to take into account global developments and evolving EU policies. For instance, in September 2021, we adopted our first strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called the Indo-Pacific strategy a milestone. The strategy allows the EU to advance cooperation with Indo-Pacific partners in 7 priority areas. I just want to address them very, very briefly. Sustainable and inclusive prosperity, green transition, ocean governance, digital governance and partnership, connectivity, human security, and of course, security and defense, meaning exploring ways to ensure enhanced naval deployments by EU member states to help protect the sea lines of communication and freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific, in line with UNCLOS, while boosting Indo-Pacific partners' capacity to ensure maritime security. We already conduct security and defense consultations with security cooperation with Indo-Pacific countries, including in such areas as cyber, hybrid, and disinformation. We have also started the implementation of projects including CRIMARIO, critical maritime routes, and ESIVA, enhancing security cooperation in and with Asia. I will focus on these projects very briefly in a moment. Common security and defense policy, naval operations, remain at the core of the EU's effective contribution to global maritime security with global operational cooperation with external partners. In particular, our Operation Atalanta operates against piracy and other illicit activities around the Horn of Africa and the Gulf of Aden. Thanks to a framework partnership agreement between the EU and the Republic of Korea for the participation of ROK in EU CSTP missions and operations, a ROK naval officer currently serves on board the Atalanta flagship. Over the past year, Atalanta has conducted numerous joint naval exercises with the Indo-Pacific partners of the EU, including, among others, the Republic of Korea, and we are very thankful for that. For instance, in October 2021, Atalanta conducted a trilateral EU-ROK Oman joint exercise, the latest EU-ROK joint exercise between Atalanta ship Canarias and the ROK destroyer Choi Yong was held on 20th of March 2022, and we are also very grateful for that. In addition, since last year, the EU has a new tool for maritime security, the concept of coordinated maritime presences, in short term CMP, which is different from a CSTP mission or operation. CMP allows the EU to act together by enhancing coordination of the existing member states' naval and air assets present in specific areas that are of vital interest to the EU. Coordination takes place on a voluntary basis, with assets remaining under the national chains of command. For this purpose, the EU military staff in Brussels has established a Maritime Area of Interest Coordination Cell as a maritime coordination hub. After the successful implementation of this concept pilot case in the Gulf of Guinea, the EU recently decided to launch CMP in the northwestern Indian Ocean by establishing a maritime area of interest covering the maritime area from the Strait of Hormuz to the southern tropic and from the north of the Red Sea towards the center of the Indian Ocean. The EU will also consider implementing the CMP concept in other maritime areas of interest in the second half of this year. The Cremario project complements CMP. Cremario's web-based EUROK software platform bolsters maritime domain awareness through information sharing and contributes to increased operational effectiveness, including national and regional coordinated responses. 19 national and regional maritime agencies from 12 countries and organizations in the Indo-Pacific are currently using EUROK. This is concrete evidence of its appeal, reliability, neutrality, and secure features, while also being cost-effective. We continue to see further potential in that regard. Cremario continues to play an important role in promoting regional cooperation, in addition to the Indian Ocean and to Southeast Asia. This project will soon extend into the South Pacific. In addition, the ESIVA project aims to increase our exchange of experience with Asian partners in the areas of counter-terrorism, maritime security, cyber and crisis management. It focuses on an initial set of 6 partners, namely India, Indonesia, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Singapore, and Vietnam. ESIVA offers avenues and framework to find opportunities for concrete cooperation, joint activities, operational engagement, and synergies with member states' activities in the region. And ESIVA will last until 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, this seminar provides a golden opportunity for our partners in the region to say how they want to make the best use of this EU-funded program. Before I come to the conclusion, just allow me one additional remark. Last month, the European Union adopted a very important strategic document, the Strategic Compass. And maritime security is a very important part of this new strategic document, the Strategic Compass. And I encourage you maybe to download and read this document. And there you will find that maritime security matters a lot in Brussels, in all our fora. Coming to the conclusion of my intervention, I would like to underline that the EU Indo-Pacific strategy is inclusive, and this is very important. This inclusivity is inclusive of all partners in the region wishing to cooperate with us when our interests coincide. At the same time, and working with international partners who share similar concerns, the EU will continue to protect its essential interests and promote its values, namely democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Let me finish by quoting the High Representative of the European Union, Josep Borrell. I quote, "We have a big stake in the region's future, and we want to be a contributor to the peace, stability, and prosperity of the region. Cooperate whenever it is possible and protect our values and interests every time that it is necessary." End of quote. I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral Elle, for sharing EU's various and inclusive efforts to heighten maritime security. Thank you once again. I also can't agree more to the quote that you shared as the last piece of your presentation. And now we are going to finally hear from the commander of the ROK Naval Education and Training Command, Vice Admiral Mr. Chung Seung-gyun, on the ROK and maritime security. Ladies and gentlemen, let's invite him with a welcoming round of applause.
안녕하십니까.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I am Vice Admiral Seung-gyun Chung of the Republic of Korea Naval Education and Training Commander.
and other distinguished officers. Thank you for welcoming me and give me the opportunity to give this speech. From now on, I'll turn to translator.
먼저 오늘 킴스와 주한
It's a great honor and pleasure for me to participate in the Indo-Pacific Region Maritime Security Cooperation Forum, co-hosted by KIMS and the French Embassy in Korea today on behalf of the Republic of Korea Chief of Naval Operations. And I'm here on behalf of the ROK Navy Chief of Staff. While 60% of the world population lives in the Indo-Pacific area, and it consists of 60% of the world GDP, which makes this area vitally important and economically and strategically important. But there have been a rise in competition and conflict rather than common prosperity and cooperation among the neighboring countries. In this aspect, I believe that today's forum contains a great significance, as high-rank officials in the field of diplomacy, defense, and the security from the ROK and the EU have assembled together to discuss ways to enhance mutual understanding and cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. In 1950, when the Korean War broke out, many European nations deployed combat and medical forces. They fought in fierce battles along with the Korean soldiers and gave hope to Korean citizens by providing medical and care packages in the war-torn region. Since ROK and EU blood-forged partners established a strategic partnership in 2010, and we have continued close cooperation up until now, expanding comprehensive cooperation in various fields, including politics, economy, and security. In particular, in the maritime security area, since 2009, the Cheonghae unit of the ROK Navy has been devoting its efforts to secure the use of maritime commons with the partners such as the EU and the US and Japan in the Gulf of Aden. And this proud unit has been participating in the Operation Atlanta, which is a counter-piracy operation since February 2017, after ROK and the EU signed the Crisis Management Participant Agreement in 2016. And since March 2020, the ROK has dispatched staff officers to Combined Task Force 456, the European Union's anti-piracy task force, grouped to closely cooperate in the anti-piracy operations. Since 2018, the Vice Chairman of the ROK Joint Chiefs of Staff has participated in the EU Chief of Defense meeting hosted by the European Union's Military Committee to enhance the mutual understanding regarding security issues on both sides. Therefore, I firmly believe that the security cooperation between the ROK and the EU will be expanded further going forward. There are three major risks of maritime security in the Indo-Pacific region. First, the natural disasters such as COVID-19, earthquake, and tsunami. Second, transnational and conventional threats such as piracy and terrorism. Lastly, the expansion of challenges against the rules-based maritime order. So this is a very important juncture. And in this important time, we're gathered here to discuss our ideas and opinions on how we can promote maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. And I believe it's very meaningful for us to have today's forum. In the Indo-Pacific region, we do have common interest. That's why the open and the free rule-based order needs to be established in this region through cooperation. And as responsible actors of the international community, we should also work together and pay more attention to maintaining the regional stability and free and open rule-based order. And I hope that today's Indo-Pacific region Maritime Security Cooperation Forum, co-hosted by Kim's and the French Embassy in Korea, would be a great opportunity for us to deeply discuss the regional role of the ROK and the EU. Insecurity and uncertainty could be another opportunity for us to prepare for the potential threats. And I'm sure what we have discussed today will serve as the great opportunity for us to strengthen maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. Once again, I would like to thank the chairman of KIMS and the French ambassador for hosting today's wonderful forum.
So we are now done with the two keynote speeches prepared. And now we are going to have a commemorative photo opportunity before we officially begin the first session. So I would like to kindly invite all the VIPs and key participants to come up to the stage. Let me kindly invite ambassadors from Korea and France, as well as the chairman and speakers of the KIMS, and also for this event as well. Could you please? Thank you very much for your cooperation. Let's give a hand as we begin the first session. Thank you for coming up to the stage. Thank you for your participation and also attendance for very important occasion. Yes. The photo opportunity was quite quick because we were tight on time, but it's okay because the grader is going to come along. Now we are going to officially begin the first session, and the topic for the first session is enhancing mutual understanding of each actor, and this will be moderated by Dr. Yi Xinhua, and there will be a total of 6 presentations followed by a Q&A session. Now, without further ado, let me invite Dr. Lee to the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause. Yes, I thought our moderator would invite our speakers up to the stage. Yes, please, all the participants who are joining us on site, please come up to the stage. The session will be joined by a French Joint Commander of Armed Forces in the Pacific, Rear Admiral Ray, Atlanta Operation Commander, Vice Admiral Jose Nunez Torrente, and also Rear Admiral Tanguy Boatman, and also Integrated Strategic Planning for CSDP and Stabilization Strategic Planner and Policy Officer and European External Action Service, Captain Geoffrey Gary, as well as Mr. Paul van Hooft, Senior Strategic Analyst at the Hague Center for Strategic Studies. So let's officially give a big hand before we begin the session. And I think Dr. Lee has missed something from the floor, so let's give her more time. Yes. One last time, let's give a big hand and officially begin the session. Yes, please take the floor.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Shinhwa Lee. I'm a professor of Korea University, Political Science and International Relations, and I'm also a president of a Korean Academic Council on the United Nations system. So very nice meeting you, and I would like to give my deep gratitude to the Chairman Kim of the Jeongwisun, who gave me the great opportunity for me to moderate this very important session. Well, the world today faces a hyper uncertainty and hyper instability, and we don't know where we are going now anymore. But I think one thing is very clear. That is the political and economic pivot is increasingly shifting towards Indo-Pacific. The region and the country in the region are becoming a key to establishing the international order of the 21st century. And the Indo-Pacific is not only the region of tomorrow, however, but it's already the present with us, where the world's center of gravity is already with us. Because Indo-Pacific is not only geographic notion, but geographic transition of strategy in terms of not only geopolitical terms, but also geoeconomics and technologies. And therefore, this forum is very timely because the Korea and EU are here together to discuss ways of cooperation on global issue and key challenges and opportunities, which is already addressed in our previous session by our Honorable Chairman Jeongwisun and Honorable Ambassador Rufor and the Rear Admiral Willigan Elle and the Vice Admiral Jung Seung-gyun. I had an opportunity to meet with the President-elect Yoon yesterday in different forum. He was emphasizing the importance of the economic security. When he talked about economic security, that is not only mention about economy, but also talking about our all common global threats, including maritime security and the emerging security commission and the global pivot states, what we should do. So in that sense, I think this session, both enhancing mutual understanding of Korea and EU countries, and also enhancing cooperation on maritime security challenges for over the next two panel will be very timely and very important. And I think I do have a mission impossible task here because I have 6 presenters and I have 60 minutes. So why don't I just give let's say maximum 7 minutes for each presenters to give the quick gist of their presentation first. And hopefully I will have another opportunity to give like a Q&A session at least for 20 minutes. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to invite the Rear Admiral Lee Sang-gun, the president of the ROK Naval War College. And in interest of time, I will skip the introduction of their wonderful bio. So Rear Admiral Lee Sang-gun, please.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. I am Rear Admiral Sang-gun Lee. As mentioned in the keynote speech, ROK and the European Union have many common interests in securing maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. So today, I'm going to talk about how we can further promote maritime security cooperation in the region. So can anyone move the slide forward? The clicker is not working. So today, I will talk about the history of ROK Navy, its how it was established and the current maritime strategy and how the ROK Navy is contributing to the global peace. And lastly, I will also briefly explain the difference between the Navy and the Coastal Guard. First, the history of the Korean Navy. Korean Navy was founded at 11 a.m. on November 11th. From the time of establishment, the Korean Navy has pursued the spirit of scholar, and that is the spirit of the gentleman. After its establishment during the 1950 Korean War, the present Navy was able to exist thanks to the aid from France and other UN member states. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you once again. Since the 1970s, naval power has been strengthened to boost self-reliance in national defense. And since 1990s, Germany has been building the 33,000 ton class destroyer, Aegis destroyer, and and this was also introduced to the Korean Navy. In a nutshell, the Korean Navy has built its power out of nothing. So now I'm going to talk about the Korean Navy's marine strategy. The ROK Navy's marine strategy is to create favorable maritime environment for peace on the Korean Peninsula and to deter all sort of threats and repel at sea if deterrence fails, and protect the safety and the life of people from unconventional threats. And for this purpose, its power is used to deter and respond to North Korean threats, nuclear and the weapons of mass destruction threats by establishing a multi-layered defense system based on the sea, an early detection and interception system. Regarding potential threats, the ROK Navy will protect maritime rights and interests at the level below armed conflict in peacetime, realize the capabilities and determination of the ROK-US alliance, and operate joint forces to enable early recovery and prevent the escalation of the war. In addition, with respect to the transnational and non-military threats, the ROK Navy will contribute to the establishment of the international maritime order and protection of the maritime traffic routes. Now, I'm going to talk about the maritime cooperation activities of the ROK Navy. To promote maritime security cooperation with the ASEAN countries, Navy-to-Navy meetings are held with 6 countries, including Indonesia, and decommissioned ships are transferred to the Philippines and the Vietnam to strengthen the maritime security capabilities of the ASEAN countries. And we're also strengthening multinational maritime cooperation to maintain international peace. And ROK Navy is participating in various joint exercises such as PSI and RIMPOC. And in particular, the PS training to prevent the proliferation of the weapons of mass destruction and the related materials has been conducted 6 times since 2006. And the command mission of Combined Task Force 151, which performs anti-piracy missions under the Combined Naval Force, has been conducted 5 times since 2010. And the Chang'e unit, which has been famous for the operation down of the Gulf of Aden, has performed a total of 36 missions since 2009. And now I'm going to talk about the maritime cooperation activities between the ROK and EU. Korea is the only country that has signed all 3 framework agreements on economy, politics, and securities with the EU. So through maritime cooperation, the ROK and the EU countries joined forces together on many aspects. After participating in the EU's anti-piracy operation in Somalia in March 2017, the ROK Navy has been involved in many cooperative activities such as combined naval and information exchange training for the international recommended transit corridor in the Gulf of Oman in October of last year. And also, the naval-to-naval meeting with the German was held in November last year, and in July of this year, this meeting is going to be held with the UK as well. The ROK and EU are required to continue to develop their relations in the future to establish maritime order and protect maritime traffic routes.
또한 해상 교통로 보호 측면에서는
And transnational threats such as piracy and illegal fishing require collaborative responses from various countries to establish a legal maritime order.
한 EU 간 관계 발전은 국제 해양법에 기반한 해양 평화적 이용 등
I believe, thus, it's necessary to expand the role of the Navy to establish maritime order, such as peaceful use of the sea based on international maritime law, and to expand the International Maritime Security Cooperation and joint opportunity training to protect maritime traffic routes for the development of the ROK-EU relations. And I think it's also important to have the discussions like what we have at today's forum, and also need the continued maritime exercise as we had one together with the French Navy's Banc d'Amier. In addition, we expect the relationship between the ROK and the EU to develop through continuous maritime cooperative effort. Lastly, I will briefly mention the difference between the role of Navy and Coastal Guard. So the Navy is just like the Navy in other countries. So Navy is to protect the safety and secure order in the naval lines. And the Coastal Guard is dealing with the smuggling, illegal trafficking, and other maritime related crimes. As you all know, the role of the Navy and the Coastal Guard are hard to differentiate completely. Threats in the sea are constantly changing and becoming more and more complex. And in this aspect, the Korean Navy and the Coastal Guard are cooperating with each other at the level of national maritime power management and declared the joint vision. And what you see on the screen is a total ship used by our ancestor during the Imjin War and the Korean-style aircraft carrier that the Korean Navy is currently developing. Just as Admiral Sun Shin-lee prepared the total ship for the invasion of the enemy during the Imjin War, the Korean Navy is now preparing Korean-style aircraft carrier to respond to the changing security environment. I believe that strong naval power must be supported to have the secure maritime stability.
You mentioned about forced employment and utilization against the multi-domain threat to face the changing security environment. Thank you. Well, please allow me, I'll just give a note, speak out for 2 minutes left, means you should finish up the 2 minutes, gentlemen. Sorry about that. Next presenter will be Rear Admiral Jean-Mathieu Ley. He's going to talk about the French Navy and its mission in the Asia Pacific, and I would assume the Indo-Pacific as well. Rear Admiral Ley, are you online or?
Bonjour et Yarana à tous, comme on dit ici à Tahiti. Avant tout,
Good morning, good afternoon, Ela Rana, everyone, as we say in Tahiti. First of all, I would like to thank the Korean Maritime Security Institute, KIMS, and the French team for organizing this event, which should enable us to progress in the field of regional cooperation through the promotion of maritime security and the exchange of best practices. As Regional Joint Commander for the Asia-Pacific Zone, I bear the responsibility for this, and my role is to develop a multilateral approach to our commitments based on the respect for international law, I know that the EZIWA program involved in the organization of this meeting has the same ambition to deal with the threats and challenges of maritime security. Thus, in my area of responsibility, which extends from Malacca to America, the commitment of our forces is not limited to French territories in the Pacific only, but also aims to contribute effectively to regional security and stability. Our forces therefore assume three responsibilities. Those, one, to ensure the protection of French citizens, territories, resources, and interests. Second, to conduct crisis interventions. Third, to ensure a presence in the Pacific, to contribute to regional security by promoting military and security cooperation. In these three areas, we are carrying out concrete actions with our partners. In January, France intervened from its Pacific territories to help the people of Tonga following the dramatic volcanic eruption, which was also followed by a tsunami. This aid was coordinated in partnership with the European Union, and thanks to the France mechanism that we maintain with Australia and New Zealand. This regional cooperation in the face of natural disasters is also the subject of mutual and annual training with the inter-allied exercises that we conduct. These are Marara in Polynesia and Croix du Sud in New Caledonia that our partners organize also with COP North with its latest version in Guam. Also, to share good practices, we have just created a network of Pacific Coast Guards in order to extend cooperation to rescue at sea, to the fight against illegal trafficking, illegal fishing, and pollution, in addition to other organizations in which we are already involved, namely the FFA, the Fish Forum Agency, and the WCPFC, the Western and Central Fisheries Commission. The heart of the matter is the sharing of maritime information, which is organized regionally around the JRCC's, Joint Rescue Coordination Centers, and in particular the IFC, Information Fusion Center in Singapore, where France and South Korea are fully invested in it thanks to the presence of a liaison officer. Faced with these threats raging in Asia Pacific, to which must be added terrorism, nuclear proliferation, and the obstruction of freedom of navigation, France is pursuing a partnership strategy, which must be based on a common reference system. The most emblematic for preventing incidents is the Code for Unplanned Encounters at Sea, called QS, discussed at the initiative of France during the sessions of the Western Pacific Naval Symposium, the WPNS. Thus, France's naval commitment in the Asia-Pacific aims to promote and defend the freedom of navigation with determination. UN clause gives each state the right to navigate and operate outside territorial waters and in international straits. France intends to make full use of this right without taking part in territorial disputes and by maintaining at sea and in the air a constant, predictable, and non-aggressive behavior. In 1 year, France has deployed 6 buildings in the Far East, including an amphibious group around an assault helicopter carrier, a nuclear attack submarine, and frigates. These deployments were all opportunities for cooperation with our partners. Recently, the surveillance frigate Vendémiaire, stationed in Nouméa, New Caledonia, sailed with the navies of Singapore, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, South Korea, and Japan. On this occasion, the joint training with the Philippines was also an opportunity to implement the Crimerio project. At the same time, we regularly commit resources to participate in the fight against the circumvention of the sanctions established by the United Nations Security Council within the framework of the ECC, the Enforcement Coordination Cell mission. In addition, we have also deployed Rafales with their A330M RTT Phoenix and A400M Atlas tankers in Tahiti and Hawaii during the Hefara Wakea mission in 2021, and we will continue to do so. These partnerships make the equation more complex for potential disruptors who would like to hinder the freedom of navigation at sea, create situations of fait accompli, or threaten the balance of the region and the natural resources of the maritime space. I will end by using the words of the Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Vendier, who sums up the situation in the following way. Everything that is not protected is looted, polluted, disputed. So, my role is to protect France's interest in the Pacific while developing multilateralism to enable a peaceful resolution of conflicts. France wants to be a balancing power, a balancing power. Thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup, Admiral Lee. As a matter of fact, I would like to remind all of you saying that France was the first EU member to publish the Indo-Pacific strategy as a country with a historical and territorial presence in the era. And I also know the last March, the French frigate came to Busan, and unfortunately with the Omicron, they canceled the public event, but it was my honor to be invited, but unfortunately I wasn't able to go. But anyway, thank you for your efforts and pay my respects to your all efforts, the Admiral Lei, to make a predictable and non-aggressive maritime security environment in this region. Our third presenter will be Vice Admiral Jose Nueces Toronto. He's talking about the Europe Operation Atalanta.
Yes. Excellencies, Admirals, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Vice Admiral Jose Núñez, the Operation Commander of UNAFOR Somalia Operation Atalanta since April last year. I'm honored by the responsibility of addressing you today, and I'm very grateful for your interest in the current scenario in which we developed our missions. I would like to convey my gratitude to the Korean authorities. After 1 year in office, I had the opportunity to witness that the Republic of Korea remains one of our most reliable partners and the first Asian country to take part in the operation. The professionalism displayed by the Korean officers that participate to our force headquarters at sea honors the Korean Navy. Indeed, with almost 14 years of existence, Atalanta remains one of the success stories of the European Union. At the end of 2020, the operation has developed its mandate, and it stands now as one of the most effective tools for the external action of the European Union in naval diplomacy. However, Atalanta is now facing new challenges precisely due to its success, but we now see opportunities we will have to seize. Next slide, please. During its existence, Atalanta has fulfilled to an outstanding degree of excellence its two core tasks of deterring, preventing, and suppressing piracy and armed robbery at sea, and protecting the ships of the Wolfur program and other vulnerable vessels. No piracy-related attack has been registered for the 3 years last recorded in April 2019, and no Wolfur program ship has been attacked under our watch. This level of effectiveness, of course, in close coordination with our strategic partners and the combined maritime forces, has turned Atalanta into a reference for the shipping industry in the protection of the interests of the maritime traffic in the Indian Ocean. We are not going to conceal that the non-renewal of the UN Security Council Resolution 2608 is affecting our capacity to perform our two duties, as Atalanta assets are hopefully temporarily not allowed to enter Somali territorial waters. Piracy remains a threat in the area, as the drivers on land are still present in Somalia. One of my main concerns is our inability to embark armed protection teams on board World Program vessels bound for Somali ports. These teams, provided by Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, and Lithuania, were in charge of protecting valuable cargoes of food and first necessity products that have benefited up to date over 4.5 million people. Against the backdrop of the drought period in the Horn of Africa and Yemen and the need for more delivery of humanitarian aid, this may severely affect the situation of the Somali population. Nevertheless, Atalanta has not lowered its guard towards illicit activities carried by the pirate networks. At the end of 2020, our architecture has been complemented with an array of secondary tasks that determine the new shapes of Atalanta as a wider maritime security provider. We are effectively monitoring the weapons embargo on Somalia, narcotics trafficking, charcoal smuggling, and illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing. In February 2022, the EU activated our counter-drug trafficking executive task, and it did not take long before this task offered its first exploits. On 21st March, French Navy ship Mistral intercepted a dhow of the waters of Oman while on patrol under the main anti-piracy mission. The operation led to the seizure of 97 kilograms of heroin and more than 4 tons of hash. The apprehended cargo was destroyed by Mistral and the crew safely released on board the dhow. This action is a great landmark in the history of Atalanta and a true proof that of its dynamism into adapting to new scenarios. In the near future, we are committed to fully develop this executive secondary task, counting on a proper legal finish, which is one of the distinctive traits of the operation. We are convinced on the deterrent effect of being able to hand over the suspects of these maritime crimes to regional authorities for their prosecution and eventual conviction, as we do in our counter-piracy operations. Next slide, please. To address its challenges, Atalanta will have to be resilient and needs to be more than just a military operation. Atalanta is deeply embedded in the civilian sphere, with our privileged relation with the shipping industry, and also because we are an active contributor to the EU integrated approach to crisis. As an example, Atalanta, the other EU missions in Somalia, EUCAP and UTM, and the European Union delegation are working together hand by hand to address the Somali situation in a global and comprehensive way. Nowadays, with our new mandate, Atalanta has clearly gone beyond its perimeter and cannot be strictly restricted to a naval operation. First, Atalanta is not limited to its geographic space materialized by our area of operations, and the participation of South Korea is the best example of this outreach. Moreover, the voluntary registration scheme of our maritime center in Brest, the MSSHOA, goes far beyond the area of operations, encompassing the whole Western Indian Ocean and the Red Sea, providing information to thousands of vessels transiting the area. Second, Atalanta cannot be seen as a strictly naval and military operation, but more as a real tool for diplomacy and external policy of the European Union. Our joint SHADE conference, SHARE and the Confliction Conference, with the Combined Maritime Force, is a unique diplomatic tool that brings together civilians and military and nations with different interests around a common issue. And therefore, this conference has a major strategic outreach. Atalanta is steadily building a network all along its area of operation to ensure a better maritime domain awareness by cooperating with international forces or coalitions that share our values, taking advantage of our unique synergy between military response and information for incidents. We also are committed to support the construction of regional maritime security architecture by the regional states. And finally, Atalanta is also a true example of the political commitment of the European Union and its member states to improve the security situation in the Western Indian Ocean and to ensure the freedom of navigation. We are directly embedded into the EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Together with you, the Republic of Korea, we illustrate perfectly the spirit of the cooperation around common values that are at the core of this strategy. We are also deeply committed to support the new political tool of the European Union, the coordinated maritime presence concept, which will be discussed later. To put in a nutshell, Atalanta is at a crossroads in addressing new challenges directly linked to its core mission in counter-piracy and armed robbery at sea. This multifaceted evolution is proceeding to keep Atalanta a unique maritime operation in its area of operation. Last slide, please. As Atalanta Operation Commander, my main priority is to keep my operation up and beyond to the standards that made it success and even exceed them. I want to fan the flames produced by our new mandate and our recent successes by developing an efficient legal framework that will enable the traffickers to be prosecuted for the crimes by the regional states. I want also to continue to develop the operation by increasing our cooperation with partners like South Korea that share our values and interests. As the proverb says, starting is half of the task. The first half was the outstanding job that has been done for 14 years. Now we need to undertake the second part. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thank you very much, the Vice Admiral Parento, who is the Atlanta Operation Commander. It is pretty impressive you saying that to enhance EU security cooperation in and with Asia, the Atlanta is a unique diplomatic tool for comprehensive approach to regional crisis, as well as support to a regional maritime security architecture. I think that is wonderful. Next speaker will be the Rear Admiral Tanguy Boatman. He's MSO and Aguneo Force Commander. He's going to talk about the European-led Operation MSO. So, Admiral Boatman.
So thank you very much. Good morning or good afternoon. I'm indeed currently the force commander of the Operation Agenor with MSO, with a staff of 24 people coming from 7 different nations situated in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. During this short time, I would like to give you a small overview of EMASO and Agenor. The aim of the mission is to provide maritime security in the region around the Strait of Hormuz. Next slide, please. What is EMASO? It means European-led maritime awareness in the Strait of Hormuz. EMASO was founded by 8 European nations in 2019. It currently consists of the 9 following partners: Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, and Portugal. So there is no supra-organization like EU or UN organizing this mission, only partners cooperating together to achieve common goals. The purpose and the end state of EMASO is to secure the freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz and its approaches. This is done through a comprehensive approach consisting of diplomatic and military means. The military track is named Operation Agenor. We work through 2 main objectives. First of all, the European surveillance in the Strait of Hormuz and adjoining seas. This is the core of the EMASO Agenor mission. This is the driving factor to support the primary lines of operation. And the surveillance requires, of course, multiple assets. The second one is a de-escalatory approach. The military presence under Operation Agenor contributes to maritime security by monitoring the shipping lanes in the Gulf region, Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman. It is not against any specific nation or organization, and it aims to provide assurance through a de-escalatory presence. The Agenor air and naval assets act in compliance with international laws, including the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, which is UNCLOS. Next slide, please. What Agenor does is showing presence in the region, as I said, with a de-escalatory posture. The available assets patrol the operation area. However, due to the limited amount of available naval assets, their presence is primarily focused in the areas close to the Strait of Hormuz. One of the most important tasks is the accompaniment of EMASO merchant vessels. This is not on demand, but offered by the force headquarters and conducted in a low-profile posture. Besides this, Agenor assets also conduct reassurance calls to EMASO flagged merchant vessels. This as a part of the reassuring measures while patrolling the area. Next slide, please. When looking at this map, one quickly realizes that a lot of different actors are present in the same area, looking for maritime security and stability in the Gulf and Northern Indian Ocean. The number of actors show the great importance of the area and lays a foundation for coordination. All actors have also common interest, which is the base foundation for good dialogue and coordination. Therefore, my staff, Agenor staff, coordinate with the other maritime security operation in the area on a weekly basis, which also ensures and underpins a better understanding of each other's tasks. Personally, I also have regular conversations with my fellow commanders in the area in order to provide the situation awareness, to exchange the tactical information, and if required, to deconflict situation. Next slide, please. So every month in the Gulf, through the Strait of Hormuz, about 3,000 ships operate commercial interest out of the average traffic in the area. And it shows how important it is to maintain the maritime security in this region. Therefore, Agenor will monitor and survey of the Strait of Hormuz and adjoining seas, as the maritime awareness in the region is the core element of EMASO. Agenor will have as objective to reassure of the reassurance of the maritime merchant traffic through presence and visibility, to reassure the freedom of navigation of EMASO flagged vessels in the area. And while showing a de-escalatory presence, the goal is to ensure, again, the freedom of navigation through peaceful measures and do not wish to escalate. This concludes my short brief, and I will be pleased to answer your question later. Thank you very much for your cooperation and to organize this forum.
Thank you, Admiral Botman. Thank you. Well, you talk about European-led maritime awareness in the Strait of Hormuz. That's called EMASO. I think it was wonderful introduction and it's nice explanation what you are doing with the 9 countries of the EU operating transnational coalition operation. And as you may know, the New York Times is mentioning Hormuz, Ukraine, Southeast China Sea, and the Korean Peninsula is the 4 most dangerous strategic area of our time. So I think you are doing a very good job there to promote a maritime and the general regional security. Thank you so much for your effort. The next presenter will be Captain Geoffrey Gary. He's a strategic planner, integrated strategic planning for CSDP and stabilization. He's going to talk about the European Union's effort on strengthening and expansion of the maritime security concept by introducing EU CMP. So Captain Gary.
Thank you. Ambassador, Excellencies, Admiral, bonjour. The EU's global security and prosperity are dependent on 7 free sea lines of communication. The EU is strongly engaged in maritime security around the world, notably with 2 major common security and defense policy naval operations, one in the Mediterranean, Operation Irini, and the other one in Western Indian Ocean, EUNAVFOR Atalanta, that has just been presented. Put together with member states' own operations across the world, European naval and air assets are present in nearly all maritime areas of the world. The coordinated maritime presences concept boosts this collective engagement by enhancing coordination of the existing member states' naval and air assets present in specific areas to increase the EU's capacity to act as a reliable partner and maritime security provider. The pilot case in Gulf of Guinea has proven that this is an effective tool in ensuring the EU's presence in the most important areas. Following the successful implementation of this pilot case, the EU is expanding its concept in the northwestern Indian Ocean. This shows the commitment to reinforce the strategic focus and actions in this region by enhancing a European naval presence to contribute to its stability, security, and prosperity, and deepening our partnerships even further. Allow me to do a quick overview of how the CMP concept has been developed and used by answering 4 questions: when, what, how, and why. So you can see on this slide that this concept is 4 years old, and it has been developed since 2019 and tested in first organized within EU as a test case, and then launched in Gulf of Guinea, and recently used and launched by the Council in Northwest Indian Ocean. Next slide, please. The EU member states already have a larger presence, as we already said it, at sea through their national assets, notably in areas that are of interest to the entire European Union. When put together under a single heading called coordinated maritime presences, these naval and air assets are remarkable in number and quality, present all year round in covering nearly all maritime areas of the world. The coordinated maritime presences tool allows the EU to act together by enhancing coordination of the existing member state naval assets and air assets present in specific areas to increase the EU's capacity to act as a reliable partner. A coordinated maritime presences is not a CSDP mission or operation. It facilitates synergies between the presences of member states in a specific area of interest so that it can benefit to the EU and its member states' interests as a whole. Coordination takes place on a voluntary basis with assets remaining under the national chains of command. There is therefore no EU command and control structure in place and no operational headquarters activated, as is the case for Operation Atalanta and Henry, for instance. This light and flexible tool does not substitute, but rather complements the more traditional military operation that the European Union is deploying and can still deploy in the future. Next slide, please. Why? We have already talked a bit about that, but I would precise that in Gulf of Guinea, we have an EU strategy on the Gulf of Guinea that we implement in close cooperation with coastal states. The worsening maritime situation in the present years, with an unprecedented rise in the number of multiple crew kidnapping in recent years, is why we have launched the coordinated maritime presences concept in the Gulf of Guinea as a timely new initiative. In the Gulf of Guinea, piracy, illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing activities, terrorism, as well as human and migrant trafficking remain ongoing security challenges and pose a major threat to maritime security and freedom of navigation, and ultimately to the economic development of the entire region. Coordinated maritime presences builds in that region on the Yaoundé architecture in close cooperation, as I said, with coastal state, and is being implemented in complementarity to existing EU Commission-funded initiatives. In Northwest Indian Ocean, there are unresolved tensions as have been presented in the Gulf region that have resulted in multiple maritime and non-maritime incidents in the Gulf and around the Strait of Hormuz. The Red Sea is one of the busiest maritime corridors in the world, channeling an important proportion of global trade, and nearly all exchanges between Europe and Asia each year. The EU strategy for cooperation in the Pacific reaffirms the strategic importance of the region, as well as the need for a meaningful European naval presence in this area. Through its Indo-Pacific strategy, the EU aims to reinforce strategic focus and actions in the region with a view to contributing to its stability, security, and prosperity based on the promotion of democracy, rule of law, human rights, and international law. Next slide, please. So to be very short and quick, I will insist on 2 points. In order to implement this concept, the first step is to define a specific area of interest. Naval and air assets of member states present in the maritime area of interest participate on a voluntary basis, remaining under the national chain of command. Member states agree to share information, awareness, analysis, and promote together international cooperation at sea and partnership with coastal countries on the areas concerned. I will insist specifically on the senior coordinator as the key actor to coordinate the European External Action Service and Commission activities in line with the EU Indo-Pacific strategy and the EU Horn of Africa strategy. The senior coordinator is responsible for overseeing the implementation of the coordinated maritime presences concept in the Northwest Indian Ocean, as well as coordinating activities related to maritime security and safety in Northwestern Indian Ocean. She or he is also responsible for carrying out representation and outreach activities to relevant actors and stakeholders, both within the EU in the region. I will stop here and leave the floor back to the moderator. Thank you very much for this invitation.
Thank you very much, Captain Jeffrey. I think that's a very nice introduction and insightful time to talk about CMP, Coordinated Maritime Presence. And also, I think I would like to highlight, he's also talking about not only what they are doing for maritime security and regional peace, but also try to build a rule-based order and democracy through the international coordination and partnership. Our last speaker, last but not least, will be Dr. Paul van Hubert, who's a senior strategic analyst at the Hague Center for Strategic Studies. He's going to talk about the role of the European Union in the Indo-Pacific to protect maritime common. Dr. Hubert.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank the French Embassy and the Korean Institute for Maritime Security. What I'll talk about today is the work we've been doing at the Hague Center for Strategic Studies, which is part of our Europe in the Indo-Pacific hub, which has the intention of bringing more cohesion to what is a region of growing crucial importance to Europe. As many of the speakers have already highlighted, the dependence on trade, and specifically waterborne trade, for Europe and for key economies in the Indo-Pacific, like the Republic of Korea, is crucial. Our own country, the Netherlands, would not be able to survive, its economy would not be able to survive if those trade routes would be under threat or let alone cut off. So that's the key. The title of our report, Guarding the Maritime Commons, alludes specifically to this part. And I'll talk about some of the main themes of the report. One of the things we highlight is the shared approach, the shared commitment to a multilateral order that highlights the freedom of navigation, that seeks to use international maritime law to settle disputes. That kind of like-mindedness, I think, is a key feature of states in the region, such as the Republic of Korea, Australia, and Japan. But as our report highlights, if Europeans want to act within the region, they must also acknowledge that there are states with which they will share certain of these interests, but perhaps not others. Yet those states are equally strategically relevant if Europeans seek to act in the region. And that is a tension that should be solved. And yet, similarly, the maritime security needs within the region also vary. With the states just mentioned, we clearly share a commitment to freedom of navigation. I think that is also very broadly carried throughout the wider Indo-Pacific region. But then there are other parts where perhaps the work that has been done to reinforce maritime law enforcement, such as anti-piracy actions, anti-human trafficking, might be a more effective political means or political tool of leverage and kind of upholding the system. The same goes for climate and environmental security, where there's different initiatives to kind of build together and tie together this system. But I think it's also clear which has been clear from the last few years, to if European states and the EU want to show their real commitment to the region, if they want to send a more powerful political signal that their national and shared interests are at stake, then words would not be enough, or participation in forums would be welcome, but not simply insufficient. So a naval presence sends a clear signal that national and shared interests are at stake. And as one of the previous speakers noted, the advantage of a naval diplomatic instrument, or whether it's diplomacy or something closer to reassurance and deterrence, the advantage of that instrument is that it's very flexible and fast. Yet European naval capacity is limited. As one of the previous speakers alluded to or mentioned, the Netherlands is a maritime state and has a long naval tradition. We still have excellent ships. One of those ships was sent alongside the British carrier group last year. But if we think about our total naval capacity, which we should divide by 4 always, because that's dividing by 4 is pretty much how many ships are actually deployable, then that one ship, well, we can basically deploy 1.5 ship at a single moment, a 1.5 air defense frigate. Excellent ship, but clearly it shows how limited it is if that one ship goes to the other side of the world. So there needs to be more naval capacity in general. But in the meantime, we're going to be very heavily constrained in a region that is so clearly crucial to European interests. And at this point, only 2 European states really have the critical mass to act more or less independently, and that's France and the UK. And only one of them is in the EU. So that's also a problem that would need to be solved. It's only those 2 states that have serious infrastructure, serious bases or national territories in the region. So it's hard to think without how Europe can play a role in the region without building on France and probably the UK, or preferably the UK as well. So in our report, we highlight a few measures that Europeans could take to have a more predictable, more stable presence, to send a more cohesive signal that the region matters and that Europeans are ready to commit resources to uphold freedom of navigation, to uphold the rule-based order. One of them is the coordinated maritime presence, as the previous speaker, I think, very clearly explained, which at the time of writing was only existed in the Gulf of Guinea at the time we wrote the report, but now as an experiment is very welcomely being spread or applied to the western part of the Indian Ocean. And I think that's a model that should be expanded further. It's also a model that preferably would start including the UK in some kind of form, right? As being having the same shared European interests and also having serious capacity to do things. The second measure that Europeans could think about is to expand their access to each other's infrastructure and to do more pre-positioning of spare parts, munitions, all things that would make the naval presence more predictable, but also more credible as it exists. And the third point we highlight in the report is that it would be good to assign specific lead nations to areas of responsibility, and that those areas of responsibility would be different zones which would connect the ports in Europe to the ports in Eastern Asia, and that dividing it up in those lines, having specific lead nations, European lead nations, responsible for many of the first chain of zones, and then coordinating this with Asian partners would be a way of both being credible and underlining how much this is a shared interest for all of us. I think just to close, it's clear that what Europeans need to do is to underline that they should not make promises that they cannot keep. So work to make those the promises they are making more credible, and they cannot afford to get distracted either by current events in Europe. If anything, Russia's war in Ukraine only underlines that the order is under attack in many different parts of the world, and that a more aggregating, in a more credible way, European capabilities, doing this together with partners in and with the region, is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hooft. Speaking of your last sentence, last remark for the Europeans, a credible partner, the Europe and Indo-Pacific countries are natural and credible partners, and we should recognize our futures are highly interconnected because of the interdependence of all economies, technologies, and many crises, and also the common global threats, including climate change and those Russian invasion of Ukraine. So we have obligations to work together to contribute to a better rule-based and open regional partnership. I think for that, this session on enhancing mutual understanding of each actor is very timely and important. Well, I thought that my mission is the impossible, but anyway, we just kind of finish up 5 minutes late, but we started 5 minutes late. So why don't I just close this first session? And should we have to come back? Should we come back 5:40 or 5:45?
Maybe just in 10 minutes.
10 minute break
Yes.
is okay?
Yes.
Then this is about 5:37. So allow us to start then 5:45. Is it okay?
Yes, in 10 minutes. That was the order I got
All right,
from the
okay.
Secretariat.
All right, so I will close the first session and I will come back for the second session. Thank you very much.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big hand for both the great moderator and the sharing of the expertise by all the discussants. We will take a short break, and as the moderator pinpointed, we will see you again in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
교수님.
As a professor, I would love to have a Q&A session, but unfortunately, as I mentioned, we had 6 presenters in the previous session, and I was very busy to run the 6 gentlemen's talk about what they are supposed to, what they should do, what they should talk. But still, we are running a bit late. So it's my apology if you would like, if you wanted to make questions to presenters, but unfortunately, we were not able to do that. So now this session, we have the 5 presenters are talking about how to enhance cooperation on maritime security challenges between the US and EU and Korea. If the first session was talking about kind of an introduction and overview of what EU are doing, this one will be a little bit more interactive. So we do have 5 presenters, and hopefully I'll just give them for 5 to maximum 7 minutes, so that we can have at least 5 to 10 minutes for further discussion. So I will just give it to, sorry, did I take what you're supposed to?
No. Yes, yes. Welcome back, everyone. I was going to give a little bit of a longer notification for the second session, but kindly our moderator has started session number 2. So we will begin the second session titled Enhancing Cooperation on Maritime Security Challenges. And there will be, as mentioned, a total of 5 speakers followed by a Q&A. Please allow me to invite our moderator once again up to the stage, who showcased excellent moderating skills during the first session. And let's give her an official big hand.
Thank you very much.
And then we are joined by 3 on-site participants, a Director General for Security and Strategy, Korea Institute for Defense Analysis, Dr. Bu Hyung-wook. Are you here? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a big hand as well. And we also have a former Commissioner General, Korea Coast Guard, Dr. Kim Seok-gyun as well. Yes, thank you for your attendance. And we also have a SIC Ambassador to ROK, His Excellency, Mr. Gustav Schmeshka, joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's offer him a big round of applause. And the 2 other participants, Program Manager, Global and Trans-Regional Threats European Commission, Service for Foreign Policy Instruments, Mr. Andre Butsaka, and Strategic Policy Officer at the Asia and Oceania Directorate of the Netherlands Foreign Ministry, Mr. Mark Westerden, is going to join us online. Yes, without further ado, let me pass the microphone over to the moderator. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I just to take off what you're supposed to do. Well, again, this one is talking about how to enhance and promote cooperation on maritime security challenge, both by EU and Korea. So our first presenter will be the Dr. Bu Hyung-wook, who's the director, as mentioned by our presider. He's saying he's a KAIDA doctor who's a very eminent scholar on this specific issue. So he's going to talk about the ROK perspectives on capacity building in Southeast Asia. Dr. Bu,
네,
5 to 7 minutes.
예, 감사합니다. 저는 한국말로 발표를.
Good afternoon. I will be presenting in Korean. If you look at the slides, that you see the only title is in English. So for capacity building of ASEAN, what role that ROK can play, that will be presented in my presentation and the ROK's stance. And there are some risks with regards to ASEAN. In Southeast Asia, there are complex relationship between the countries and conflict of interest, and the security threats are becoming more and more complex. And there is a lack of history and foundation for multilateral security cooperation in the recent, and this is leading to the lack of multilateral security cooperation amongst Asian countries and the ROK. And with the Asian countries, that it's less pressure for the Korea in promoting security cooperation when compared with the cooperation with the US, China, and Japan. And as the Korea status and attractiveness rise in the region, and the trade volume between Korea and Asia increases, the number of requests for security cooperation from Asian countries increasing. So you see that there are the 9 dashed line in the South China Sea, which the China is using as the rationale for claiming its territorial right for the Southeast Sea. And Korea has promoted the new southern policy, and this has created a political momentum for security cooperation with ASEAN. And the ROK Navy has been involved in the cooperation with the Asian countries and might be able to provide more support for Asian countries in resolving humanitarian aid, disaster relief, and the peacekeeping activities, and the cyber and the maritime security, counterterrorism, and the human security issues. And the many possibilities for defense industry cooperation exist between the ROK and ASEAN. That you see, there are weaknesses and the limitations as well. Compared with the US, China, and Japan and India, which are the major partners, Korea only has limited influence among the Asian countries. And there are concerns among the ASEAN countries towards the Korea's mercantilistic attitude as the aspects of China's alternative market and the defense export market is highlighted. And there are not enough experts who have expertise on Asian and Korea multilateral security cooperation. So when working with and joining forces with the ASEAN, this cooperation with ASEAN is important for the ROK as well. So we need to have new and the fresh approach to this cooperation with ASEAN. And the major task will be done by the ROK Navy. If you look at the next slide, so the gray area is the area with the priority areas. This is for the capacity building and the talent nurturing and the awareness sharing and the defense industry cooperation and the joint exercise. And all of these joint activities are in the infant stage. And going forward, we will be able to have more opportunities for providing support for ASEAN countries. And what is what is noteworthy with regards to today's topic is that we can have many opportunities to collaborate and provide support for ASEAN. At the moment, that on the level of awareness sharing, that the rule-based order was mentioned by several speakers. Yes, that should be established. And we shouldn't highlight the mercantilistic approach. So the defense industry cooperation can be pushed back to the later stages. So now the priority should be on the awareness sharing. The ASEAN countries, they do have the ASEAN consensus and the policy framework. So the comfort level for ASEAN country is very important. So we should approach cautiously. And there are 7 major areas for cooperation. So next slide. So the maritime cooperation and anti-terrorism and the humanitarian aid and the disaster relief and anti-terrorism and the cyber threat. So for all these areas that we can collaborate with the ASEAN countries, that you see that there are ample opportunities for the Navy to be involved in this cooperative activities, as it encompasses the maritime security and the security cooperation and the military medical support and the peacekeeping operation and the humanitarian mine clearing activities as well. So we can maintain the balance of powers in this region while working well with the ASEAN countries. So that's it for my presentation.
Well, we all know that there are many common analogies between EU's Indo-Pacific strategies and the new southern policy of Korea. Both partner countries are well aware of the centrality of the ASEAN. In that sense, what Dr. Boo said, our cooperation for maritime cooperation, HDR operation, anti-terrorism and cyber issue is very timely for not only aware sharing business, but also the joint training and academic exchanges. So thank you so much for that. The next speaker will be the Andrei Bosatika. He is a program manager of a global and trans-regional threat European Commission. He's going to talk about EU-funded maritime capacity building actions. So, Mr. Bostaka, you have 5 to 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. It's my big pleasure being here today, and thank you very much for inviting me. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Andrei Bosatka, and I work as program manager in the European Commission in Brussels, Service for Foreign Policy Instruments. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity now to let you know more about external cooperation programs and projects funded by the European Commission, which are working to counter different maritime threats in the world. These programs are one of the tools that the European Union has in its disposal in order to contribute to enhancing maritime security and safety and countering maritime threats across different regions. Through these programs, the EU seeks to cooperate with partner countries, especially to help enhance their capacities to tackle maritime threats. In other words, these are mostly cooperation capacity building programs, but not only. With these programs, primarily aim to counter a variety of threats and risks, such as piracy, armed robbery, illicit trafficking, terrorism, or IUU fishing. But we also use these programs for other purposes, such as promoting policy dialogues and security cooperation, promoting UNCLOS, confidence building, project coordination, research, so many different objectives. And when conducting these programs, we cooperate with various implementing partners, be it regional organizations, international organizations such as UNODC or Interpol, specialized NGOs, or EU member states, agencies, and research institutes. In terms of geographical scope, most programs have a focus on Africa, specifically Gulf of Guinea and Western Indian Ocean. However, we have been progressively increasing our cooperation and engagement also across the entire Indo-Pacific. So not only Western Indian Ocean, but also with Asian countries and the Pacific. But let me now present to you more in detail what are the specific thematic areas that the EU is active in through its numerous programs and projects. I list 7 different areas. First of all, it's maritime governance. This is, of course, absolutely essential. Let me have 2 examples. One is the MASE program, which has a budget of 42 million euros and has been active in the Western Indian Ocean for almost a decade now. The cooperation with the Indian Ocean Commission led to the establishment of 2 regional centers, a Maritime Information Fusion Center, RMIFC in Madagascar, and the Regional Coordination Operational Center, RCOC in the Seychelles. Their work is underpinned by 2 regional agreements, bringing on board 8 countries for sharing of information and for regional coordinated actions at sea to combat maritime crimes. A regional action plan addressing maritime pollution has also been approved last year. Another example in Gulf of Guinea is the SWAMES and PASMA programs, which focus on policy and legislative frameworks of the coastal states, including on the handover of detained suspects. This led to first successful convictions of pirates last year in Nigeria and Togo. The second thematic field, very importantly for the EU, is maritime domain awareness and information sharing. This is one of our key priorities too. A number of EU programs are working in this field in order to promote culture of information sharing and strengthening collaboration at sea. Let me give you a couple of examples. First of all, the Crimario project that was also mentioned by Admiral Elle has developed the IORIS, a platform for maritime coordination, information sharing, and surveillance for Indo-Pacific. What is important, IORIS is not an EU tool. It was designed for Indo-Pacific countries and organizations. It can be used at national, regional, trans-regional level across the entire Indo-Pacific. In this way, operational collaborations is supported in interagency and cross-sectoral manner. A number of maritime exercises have already been conducted or supported through the use of IORIS, such as recently IMEX of Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, but also others. Crimario is also working on interconnecting information fusion centers in Indo-Pacific through developing a dedicated interoperability software. Right now, as we speak, a conference is taking place in Paris with representatives of the IFC Singapore, Madagascar, and Peru discussing their interoperability. So let's keep fingers crossed for the success of their discussions. There are also other examples. In Western Indian Ocean, the EU is supporting maritime domain awareness and information sharing with other regional initiatives such as MASE, Red Sea Initiative, or Port Security Program. The last one has a special focus on interconnecting port agencies with the regional maritime security architecture, as well as with Interpol's I-24/7 system. In Gulf of Guinea, a dedicated platform called YARIS has been developed for the Yaoundé architecture. The third thematic field is maritime law enforcement capacity building, which is also an important area of the EU's focus. The EU cooperates with law enforcement agencies in all regions against all types of maritime crime. To give you an example, the SEACOP project helps combat transnational illicit trafficking across the Atlantic Ocean on board ships with a focus on drugs by building capacities to profile and search vessels. The fourth area is port security and safety, another important field supported by two regional programs around Africa. An emphasis is put on the legislative framework and compliance with the ISPS code, on improving port governance and port security management, as well as on civil protection, for instance, against maltreatment of hazardous material. The fifth area is promoting of sustainable fisheries, very important. We have two large regional programs around Africa that support fisheries management and governance and strengthen capacities to fight IUU fishing. This is, of course, important for food security and poverty alleviation. One of the programs is called EcoFish, with a budget of 28 million euros, promoting fisheries collaboration in Western Indian Ocean. The sixth area is very specific, and it's focusing on confidence building, a project called Incident and Conflict Prevention in the South China Sea is promoting contacts and confidence among key government agencies from regional states. The project also aims to support the negotiation of a code of conduct for South China Sea to promote the respect of rule of law, including UNCLOS and its dispute settlement. And last but not least, there are projects with important support functions in order to support policy dialogues, promote security cooperation, strengthen project coordination, and enhance EU's communication efforts. A very good example of this is the ESIVA project, which is supporting today's event. This is all from my end. Thank you very much for your attention and again for organizing this forum.
Thank you, Mr. Bostatica. You kindly explained what EU-funded maritime capacity building action is about. In particular, it's impressive to learn that you are doing for maritime governance, military sharing, and sustainable fishery management for the food security and ecofish issue, and in addition to, and as well as the confidence building for negotiation of South Code of the Conduct in South China Sea. I think that's very important issue for maritime security as well. Our third speaker will be the Dr. Mark Hostetten. He is the Strategic Policy Advisor at the Asia and Ocean Directorate of the Netherlands Foreign Ministry. He will talk about capacity building activities of EU member state, citing the case of the Netherlands. So Dr. Hostetten, you have 5 to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid I'm not a doctor yet, so but thank you for the promotion. It's always good to think they're higher. So good afternoon, everybody. Today I will be talking indeed what a country, relatively small country as the Netherlands, can do in maritime security, what our thinking is, and what we are doing as part of the EU effort in this important field. And let me first start by thanking the Korean Institute for Maritime Security and the French Embassy to organize this important event, which is very timely. And I think it's very good because we need events like this to talk to partners in the Indo-Pacific and Europe, to exchange views, to exchange expectations, to see what possibilities are, and see where we can cooperate together. And it's important not only to set out what we are already doing, but also look a bit ahead from where can we maybe work together. For us, the basis of this all is our Indo-Pacific strategy, which led eventually also to the EU Indo-Pacific strategy, and which maritime security is a very important part of. And that basically has two important elements. That is the promotion of our security interest of the Netherlands, of the EU, which are also, we are very much, of course, in favor because of trade relations by a stable Asia, so to say. And the other one is the promotion of the international rules-based order and the freedom of navigation, which goes close to our heart, as Netherlands is one of the founders of basically the libre marum, the freedom that the seas are free for all to use. So on maritime cooperation specifically, we ask ourselves the question, how can we contribute bilaterally as part of this larger EU effort? One of the things we're currently doing is looking basically how can we enhance the security element of the EU Indo-Pacific strategy. And maritime security is one part of that. But one other parts we're looking at is enhancing cybersecurity. How can we do that with the region? And economic resilience. And one question we ask ourselves, it's about the how part. Countries like Korea, but other countries in the region too, get now 27 EU partners. They get the Canadians, they get the UK, they get the US on their doorsteps asking for cooperation. And how can we better organize that? Can we maybe come, and that's a question because we still did not do that, that we get groups of interested partners working together around a certain subject. For example, maritime security, that you have one or two lead nations, one, for example, from Europe, one from the region, and adopt this topic and bring it, trying to bring it further. So this is a work in progress. This is what we are thinking of together with some other nations in Europe. If we can do this and present this maybe at the next Indo-Pacific Forum, which will be held in Prague in June. The other thing what we are doing, what we already did, I should first go a little bit in the past, is of course that in 2021, we participated in the UK Carrier Strike Group, who visited the Indo-Pacific, who went to Japan with our frigate, the Evertsen. And while we are doing that, we were visiting important partner countries like Korea when we did this. Paul van Hoofd in the previous session talked already about our capacities and capabilities, which are not, especially for a small country like the Netherlands, very big, but it's not off the charts that we do this once in a while, that we maybe look at the possibilities to visiting the region. And that will not be every year, but we're looking at the possibilities. Can you do this as a part of a rotating scheme, maybe with other interested partners, that you always sort of have a ship present? So Another thing we are doing is basically our internal homework. So in the Netherlands, we are now setting up a network that we, on the area of maritime security, can better find each other. So we try to set up a network with the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where I am from, Customs, the Coast Guard, for us very important, the Port of Rotterdam, and companies, to see where we can work together in when it comes to capacity building and what we can offer to the region and what the region can offer to us. Because that is, of course, it's a two-way street. It's not only we to the region, it's also the region to us. Another element we're looking at and what we are already doing is we heard a lot about the EU missions in the region. So we participate in this EU mission in Atalanta at the moment with 2 staff officers, in EMASOR with 4 staff officers. And currently we are deciding on can we come to a contribution also to the coordinated maritime presence in the Gulf of Guinea. That will be looked at in the coming weeks, and we make a decision then. The Netherlands also is participating in regional organizations, which also get more important because of geopolitical developments. So we are participating in the Regional Cooperation Agreement on Combating Piracy and Armed Robbery Against Ships in Asia, or RECAP in short. And we are looking if we can maybe also have somebody in the Indian Ocean Rim Association. This is also a part of, say, the building blocks, what we can do to enhance maritime security. And the last point, and that is actually for us, that's our bread and butter. That's what we feel at home with. That's what we also have a special knowledge in the Netherlands. We are, of course, coming from The Hague, the legal capital of the world. And we have here the courts like the Permanent Court of Arbitration, the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court. And we do in the promotion of the international rules-based order. And part of that, when it comes to UNCLOS, international maritime law, is the peaceful settlement of disputes. And this is what we actively promoting. And we set up, if you want, a sort of coalition of the willing, of a small group, which we are doing this. So we do this with our partners from Australia, Japan, and Singapore, and would be pleased to invite others to that group to promote this. At the upcoming Raisina dialogue in India, we will have a side event on the promotion of UNCLOS, of the promotion of the international law of the sea, together with the countries just mentioned, and India, where we will discuss also how we can upkeep UNCLOS in a time, well, of geopolitics, basically. Another thing is we would like to look at what we can do also in this field, especially with ASEAN. With ASEAN, we already are training. We have an institute in the Netherlands called Klingendaal, and we are training ASEAN countries, officers of ASEAN countries in the law of the sea. And this is something we are already doing for many years, and we like to continue. And last but not least, we are looking with Indonesia of possible cooperation also on the law of the sea. And this is something we would very much feel comfortable to explore further with if Korea in some way can be involved too. That is it from my side. Thank you very much once again for organizing this webinar seminar. I think it is very timely and this important subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pashdeten. Well, I think what you say is a very informative. You talk about bilateral and multilateral cooperations, and also you mentioned about the issue of a cooperation over cybersecurity and the non-traditional, non-conventional security issues. And also you highlighting importance of the not only EU partnership, but also non-EU partnership, including the UK, Canada, and then Korea. And you said the Netherlands tried to seek some method for that. And also we have here the Honorable Ambassador, the Czech. You mentioned about in June they were having a Praha meetings on Asia Pacific Forum. I look forward to learning more about that. Having said that, I will have the first presenters who's gonna be Mr. Dr. Kim Seok-kyun. He is a former Commissioner General in the Korea Coast Guard. So he's going to talk about the present and the future prospect of Korean maritime security capacity, and he will highlighting from legal perspectives.
Thank you, Chair. I am Professor Seok-kyun Kim from Hansei University and the former Commissioner of Korea Coast Guard as well. I am very honored to be invited to this great forum to address the colleague from the EU and Korea about the legislative status of maritime security in Korea. Given the time limits, I would provide outlines rather than getting into the details. First, I would examine the definitions of maritime safety and security, which are most commonly used in the maritime domain, though, but there are no any agreed upon the definitions. So they are often interchangeably used and interpreted depending on who is using and what context. So researching the various definitions, I came to conclusion, my own conclusion actually, as below the maritime security. I would not get into the definitions in detail just due to the time limits. The most prominent distinction between the two terms might be concerned with the maritime security is principally concerned with measures and activities to address threat and unlawful acts which derive from the intentional cause, as opposed to maritime safety concerned with the natural and accidental cause. Maritime, the security domain may fall into several categories, which include security of territorial integrity, security of navigation, and security of cargo, and security of ports and on offshore installations, and the maritime cybersecurity, which is increasingly becoming an imminent danger to maritime domain. And other areas might include the illegal fishing and the maritime domain awareness. Given that when it comes to Korea's security regulations, Korea adopting 1988 SUA Convention and enacted punishment for damaging ships and Maritime Structure Act. In 2005, Korea adopted SUA protocol and enacted adopted to enhance maritime security against maritime terrorism and concern over the proliferation of WMDs in the aftermath of 9/11 terrorist attacks. Notably, none of the East Asian states has become a party to a protocol. It is due to the concern about possible infringement of their sovereignty and a view that the participation in PSI enables them to intercept transport of WMDs. For these considerations, East Asian countries are not likely to accede to protocol in the near future. In my view, Korea as well. Regarding the act of piracy, they are punishable under Criminal Act and the punishment for damaging ships and the Maritime Structure Act and the prevention of piracy damages to vessels engaged on the International Voyages Act. The act of piracy is punishable under Criminal Act as a maritime robbery, not the piracy. So the more broadly defined act of piracy are punishable under Punishment for Damage Act. In dealing with the Samojuri pirates case, in which Somali pirates, the hijacked a Korean chemical tanker on January 15, 2011 in Somali coast, and the crew were rescued by the Korean Navy's commanders. A number of legal problems arose in instituting the legal proceedings against the pirates brought to the Korean justice. I would not get into detail, also due to the time limits. In 2016, the Korea enacted Prevention of Piracy Damages to Vessels Engaged on International Voyages Act. It provides ship owners are required to install stutter on ships engaged on the international voyages. And the ships engaged on international voyages, transiting the risk areas are allowed to employ privately contracted armed security guard. The act provides for the standards and rules to be complied with. Securities engaged on the International Voyages Act, adopting the ISPS code. The act provides a requirement for foreign ships, when they try to enter the Korean port, the ship security information 24 hours prior to their entry. As you are well aware, over the last decade, the UN Security Council has adopted a series of resolutions imposing sanctions on Korea, which conducted a nuclear test and the missile launches in violation of relevant treaties. So the resolutions on North Korea so far by the UN Security Council are up to 13. The security of Northern Limit Line, which is a very critical maritime security issue in Korean Peninsula, is enforced by the EEZ fishery law, the Territorial Sea and the Contiguous Zone Act, and the regulation, actually law for the safe fishing. The Korean Navy at the forefront to ensure the NLL security, and the KCG, Korea Coast Guard, support the Navy. Lastly, I would conclude my presentation by suggesting a couple of the legislative measures to address the legal issues just I mentioned. Firstly, the legislative measures are required to close legal gaps in proceedings of piracy cases brought by the Navy's anti-piracy operations overseas. Secondly, the legislative measures for maritime cybersecurity are an urgent need. The cyber attacks in maritime domain are expected to shift to operational technology systems from the information technology systems, and accordingly, their focus will shift from the financial gains to ship hijackings. Evolution of partial and fully autonomous ships require a great security need for cyber risk management. So I would say the recommendation and guidelines adopted by international organization, which is represented by the IMO, for cybersecurity management need to be incorporated into existing maritime security registrations, and the mandatory measures for cybersecurity, such as ship cybersecurity certificates, are required. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. He nicely made some distinction between maritime safety and maritime security in the beginning. And then he highlighting not only kind of traditional and conventional, the maritime threat like territorial integrity and navigation, but also he was highlighting the maritime cybersecurity and what you should do from the legal perspectives by citing act of piracy and also enforcement net and enforcement of a UN sanction on North Korea and security of NLL. Thank you so much for that. And last but not least, we have the Honorable Ambassador to the Czech Ambassador to the Republic of Korea, the Gustav Slamečka. He will talk about the Czech approach to the Indo-Pacific regions. Thank you so much. Are you going to come into the podium? Yeah, please.
So good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the organizers of this forum for this opportunity to address you. As you may know, Czech Republic is the next EU presidency holder. The topic of my presentation is Czechia approach to Indo-Pacific. Therefore, I will talk from broader perspective. Still, I hope that you will find my presentation interesting and meaningful. So for the Czech Republic, a landlocked country far from the Indo-Pacific, the region is closer than it seems. Close in terms of being well integrated in the global trade, close in terms of facing the same threats, and close in terms of proximity through modern technology. Also, in the light of this Russian invasion of Ukraine, the EU strategy for Indo-Pacific and its implementation is even more relevant, especially in security aspects. So, for making this strategy, Czech Republic has been a strong supporter of EU strategy for cooperation in Indo-Pacific from the very beginning, and supported the non-paper issued by our colleagues from Germany, France, and the Netherlands back in 2020. EU needs to be active towards the region, and the key is a bigger stress on security issues, even though trade, sustainability, and promotion and protection of human rights and the rule of law continues to be the basis of our cooperation with the partners in the region. In terms of security and stability of the Indo-Pacific is fundamental as it is stressed in the EU strategy and as it reflects the challenges of quickly changing security environment and the current role of China and its global ambitions. What is happening in Europe cannot be seen in isolation. In order to face the challenges successfully, it is essential to join hands with like-minded countries, and especially in the region, and together with United States and NATO and its partners. It is not about NATO being active in the Indo-Pacific, but NATO and EU and other partners searching for synergies in countering threats from the region. Connectivity and trade. We are also strong supporters of the linkage between the strategy and newly announced Global Gateway. We support EU connectivity partnership with Japan and India, as well as potential new partnerships in cooperation with ASEAN, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. Now, let me go to the Czech presidency. Horizontally, we highlighted 3 pillars of our EU strategy. The first is the strong Europe. The second one is the resilient Europe. And the third one is the sustainable Europe. Under strong Europe, we understand Europe as a global player, reliable partner, and ally for effective multilateral solutions. Under resilient Europe, we understand the resilience internal and against internal and external threats, including hybrid warfare and terrorism. In sustainable Europe, Europe as a player in protecting climate, building resilience, and stabilizing third countries, an active proponent of fulfillment of United Nations SDGs. For the Czech presidency, it is crucial to strengthen consultative mechanism with like-minded countries and support effective multilateralism, including in security area. Given the fact that universality of human rights are also being challenged in the region, it is important to put emphasis on promotion of democracy, rule of law, human rights, and international law. Active promotion of Global Gateway is also a must. We want to focus on cybersecurity, security of supply chains, space, human security, maritime security, but also on other agendas such as connectivity and protection of nature. We would like to aim our efforts on concrete projects during our upcoming presidency starting from July this year, in close coordination with our French and Swedish colleagues. As for the follow-up to the Ministerial Forum in Paris, we are planning to hold the already mentioned Prague high-level dialogue on Indo-Pacific, which will be held on the 13th and 14th of June. This dialogue will be different a little bit from the Paris event. There are 30 partners from Indo-Pacific invited and 30 other partners to the event. But it will be a mixture of policymakers, researchers, and also business representatives. Also, United States has been invited to the dialogue, as well as NATO. Czech Republic promotes international collaboration to maintain a free, open, safe, secure, and stable cyberspace, where democracy, rule of law, and fundamental freedoms apply. Security of supply chains of new technologies with focus on artificial intelligence on cross-border data flows will be the main topic of the 4th Prague Cybersecurity Conference this year in November. We also welcome the opportunity to put to a full use the ongoing ESIVA project, and we are preparing a cybersecurity seminar in Singapore in autumn with some of our Indo-Pacific partners. There will be discussions with ESIVA and its 6 partner countries about other activities in capacity building, crisis management, or maritime security. These are also ongoing. With the region of South and Southern Asia being prone to natural disasters, we are working with the European Commission and EEAS on further promotion of space data usage for disaster risk reduction and also safe, secure, and sustainable outer space. One event is planned for Thailand and one in Prague. In Jakarta, International Conference on Protection of Biodiversity, Circular Economy, Agriculture will be organized in cooperation with European Union and Indo-Pacific partners. Last but not least, the Czech Republic is also preparing its own strategy for Indo-Pacific that should be approved by the government and published before the Czech presidency of the European Union. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think that's a pretty nice outline for what you are doing as a next president of European Commissions. Well, we started in the 5:50. So can I just take 10 minutes for a Q&A session? Is it okay? All right, so can I just collect some couple of questions? Ambassador, Germany of Reifenstahl, please. Can have one more year.
Many thanks for the presentation. I think this was really most interesting and I learned a lot. I have a question to Dr. Kim. You said with regard to the challenging we are facing, it's also legislative measures required to close legal gaps in the proceedings of piracy cases. Were you speaking more of domestic legislation or is it also a question of international law?
I was talking about the domestic legislation. As I discussed in my presentation, there's the legal gap between the Korea's domestic law and the international law. The the piracy is not defined actually in the criminal law, which was originally defining and dealing with the piracy cases before enactment of the couple of the legislations I just provided. So still there is the gap in defining the piracy and dealing with piracy cases. The pirates brought by the Navy officers, just as we were seeing in the cases of the Somali pirates. According to the Criminal Procedure Act, the naval officers are not authorized to arrest pirates. When they arrest the pirates, they immediately hand over the pirate to the judicial officer, like the Coast Guard officers. But Coast Guard officers were not on board the ship, the naval ships. That was just the first problem. And when you try to obtain and the arrest warrant, it should be within 48 hours upon the arrest of pirates. When we think about the pirates cases arrested in Somali coast, it's just a long away from the Korea. And it's impossible actually to comply with the provisions. That's all the most commonly discussed legal gaps should be addressed. Still, there still exist the problems.
Thank you. Anybody else from the floor? Yes, Minister Lee Chung-myeon, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the excellent and informative presentations from the presenters. And I tried to be quiet, but I couldn't resist my temptation to enlarge my understanding about the European Navy, including France and Czech and Netherlands. So my question is a sort of a conceptual question to the presentation made by Admiral Jean-Mathieu. So I'm not sure whether the French presenter is still online or not, but I can ask the French ambassador. So the Admiral Jean-Mathieu articulated 3 goals of French Navy. The first is protection of French national interests. And second is the interference or management of crisis. And third is the enhancement of military and security cooperation. And this may be related to the EU goal, the 3 goals of EU, which the Czech ambassador mentioned: strong Europe, resilient Europe, and sustainable Europe. So although these goals, 3 goals, are not exhaustive, but they comprise major goals for every Navy who wants a greater security inside and a greater influence outside. So these goals may be mutually reinforcing, but they can be sometimes mutually conflicting. And especially when these goals are mutually conflicting, there comes the issue of a priority among 3 goals and comparative weight of each goal. So of course, this concept of priority depends on how you guys define your national interests. The priority and comparative weight will be basically decide the nature of your Navy strategy, whether it is sort of defensive or proactive or sometimes aggressive. So my question is like this. How do you prioritize these different 3 goals? Or how do you define the relationship among 3 different goals? Or I can ask whether you simply think that these 3 goals are 3 parallel concepts, which don't have any priority among each other. So, can you answer this question, Ambassador, or anybody else?
I will try
Though I
Admiral Lei is on the line or not?
no, he's not
He's
anymore
not?
online. So I tried to answer your question. Though I'm not an admiral, I just finished as a junior commander in the Navy. So I try my best. Anyway, en français, si vous le permettez.
So it was very definitively defined by the Marine. Yes, it is true that the defense was about strong Europe and a resilient Europe and also durable, sustainable Europe. So the first point is quite clear in the meaning. And the French Marine, is seeking to defend the terrorism and the risks or the attacks of the region. So the crisis management is an essential element for the Marine Navy because we are engaged in the region in terms of operation, aerial, and naval with its resources. So that's why the French Navy, since 1945, has been engaged with the regional management of crisis. And within this context, we are consistent in international cooperation with our partner countries. So the maritime cooperation is once again to protect the regional peace and security on the basis of the national defense, including the region. And whatever the nature of that security is in the partner region, international cooperation should come first as a priority. And as you have mentioned, 3 objectives. With all these important elements, the priority should be the security, regional security, I would say. And I hope that that answered your question.
Anybody else? Maybe I collect one more question from floor. Okay, if not, as I mentioned in the beginning, the Indo-Pacific is obviously not only the tomorrow issue, but it's already with us. So that means the word center of gravity is already here, both in geoeconomics and geopolitical, and now even geotechnological terms. So we all have to understand the current dynamics in this region have given rise to an intense and very close geopolitical competition, which adds to increasing tensions on trade, global supply chains, and technological, political, security, and trade areas. So our ultimate goal is to maintain and enforce a free and open, and as several presenters mentioned today, rule-based order in the Pacific for all of us, while establishing strong and lasting partnership. So I do understand the European Union, including France, Czech, and Germany, are very committed actors, and they are bridges between our 2 regions. So I hope that today's forum will help all of us understand different, at the same time similar Indo-Pacific strategies of EU and its member states, and more importantly, that it will provide us how EU and Korea can cooperate together to contribute to a better rule-based and open regional and global cooperation. So thank you so much. And this is the end of the second session on promoting cooperation maritime security challenges. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for your elegant moderation throughout the two sessions. And also thank you both the speakers and discussants and participants to this sessions as well. Now we are going to conclude the forum with closing remarks from our very special guests. Before I invite them over to the stage, let's give another round of applause for all the participants on the stage as they go down the stage. Yes, it's been a long time since were able to hold an on-site event, and I can see that our floor is full of distinguished guests. Thank you for your participation. And now we only have two closing remarks, and then we'll move on to our dinner after having a short break. And let me, without further ado, invite Director General for International Policy at the Republic of Korea, Ministry of Defense, Mr. Kim Sang-jin. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a big hand.
First of all, I would like to thank the Kims and the French Embassy in Korea for inviting me to today's forum. From the onset, I have listened to all the presentations. As the Director General for International Policy of the Ministry of Defense, National Defense, today's forum was a very valuable time for me to see where the EU's maritime security policy is headed in the Indo-Pacific region. As you are well aware of, the ROK and the EU signed the ROK-EU Crisis Management Participant Agreement in May 2014. And since that, the Security Defense Dialogue has been held between the European External Action Service and the ROK Ministry of National Defense since 2015. And since 2017, it has been mentioned many times that our proud Cheonghae unit has been participating in the EU-led anti-piracy operation Atalanta. In October of last year, the Chungmugong Isun-shin, the Cheonghae Unit 35, and the EU-sized Spanish frigate Victoria were involved together in the anti-piracy operation in the Gulf of Aden. 2 years ago, I became the Director General for International Policy of the Ministry of National Defense in Korea. And personally, deepening defense cooperation with France, which is a co-host of today's meeting, has been one of my priorities. And the French ambassador here and all the other distinguished VIPs here would probably know how much efforts I have been putting to strengthen defense cooperation with the European nations. And the ROK Ministry of National Defense paid attention to the fact that France was the first among European Union's countries to establish the Indo-Pacific strategy in June 2015. And in February of this year, Defense Minister Uksa made a visit to France to hold a defense ministerial meeting and agreed to expand cooperation between the two countries to new security areas such as cyber and space. And last month, French frigate Bang Damier made a call at the Busan port. And all of these examples show that the defense cooperation between the two countries is evolving. And respecting the principle of freedom of navigation is very important for our national interest, as the ROK relies on maritime trade routes for a significant part of its trade. It has been mentioned by many speakers, we need to build rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific region, and the ROK Navy and the Korean Ministry of National Defense will be committed to contributing the establishment of this rule-based order. And in this regard, what was presented in the second session today under the theme of enhancing cooperation in strengthening maritime security capabilities, examples of maritime capacity building activities for the ROK and the regional countries in the EU will be very valuable. As you know, that global attention on the Indo-Pacific region is growing, and this interest is leading to concrete actions to strengthen maritime security capabilities in the Indo-Pacific region. As you know, the Korean Peninsula is still divided, and many of our naval forces are being used to deter North Korean provocations in the waters of the Korean Peninsula. Still, that the Korean Navy will be expanding its capabilities and expertise. And we anticipate the possibility of cooperation with the EU will continue to expand. In March last year, the EU ambassador to Korea visited the defense minister Uksa, and the EU proposed SEWA, Enhancing Security in and with Asia project, to expand cooperation with Korea. Back then, I was able to feel that the potential for cooperation between the ROK and the EU was limitless. Back then, I was a bit skeptical, but listening to all the presentations today, that I'm confident that we can have many cooperative opportunities going forward. And there is one thing that I felt by listening to the presentations. The ROK and the EU can become excellent partners in the process of promoting global maritime securities. As you know, that the US-China strategic competition is intensifying in this region, and the world is paying attention to the Indo-Pacific region. The ROK hopes that Europe will continue to play a positive role in the Indo-Pacific region to stably manage the security situation on the Korean Peninsula and maintain the rule-based international order. Once again, I would like to thank the Kims and the French Embassy in Korea for co-hosting today's wonderful forum. 훌륭한 표현.
Throughout both sessions. So thank you once again for your keen attention and great summarization about the purpose of today's meeting. And now, last but not least, I would like to invite EU Delegation Deputy Head of Mission, Mr. John Bogerts, up to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be the last speaker here today. I'm speaking today on behalf of the EU ambassador to the ROK, Maria Casillo Fernandez. Fortunately, she will be able to join you for dinner later on. On her behalf and on behalf of the EU delegation, I would like to convey our strong appreciation for what has been an excellent event. But I would also like to start my closing remarks by saying what Maria would definitely have said also and that is to highlight the current security situation in Europe and the Russian aggression and crimes against Ukraine. Of course, everything we do now today has to be viewed against this context. And I think that makes an event like today also even more important and makes it even more important that like-minded countries that respect the rule-based order work close together. So I'm happy that many of the speeches have actually put a mark on that as well. So I think that today we managed to kickstart the process of further deepening EU-Korea maritime security cooperation, which is a crucial area of cooperation. Last year, when our Chief of Defense, General Graziano, visited Korea, both sides jointly identified maritime security as one of the key priorities for our bilateral cooperation. And I've heard today that the challenges are ever increasing, and there are ever new challenges coming up as well. So we are already doing a lot. We have a very promising cooperation. The ROK was the first partner country in the Indo-Pacific region to conclude a framework participation agreement, as was referred to by the Director General, which enables Korea to participate in EU crisis management operations. And under this agreement, which entered into force about 6 years ago, the ROK Navy has participated in EU's anti-piracy operation Atalanta, which has also involved recent joint naval exercises, both in March this year and October 2021. But as I said, there are ever increasing and new challenges. So there is definitely scope to do more. And so building on what we are already doing, we hope that today's forum is another step in further reinforcing our concrete cooperation. And we of course hope that the new administration of President-elect Yoon will also prioritize this. In that regard, I was happy to hear that DG, the Director General, mentioned that he was less skeptical now than he was last year. So that's a welcome development. As far as what the EU has to offer, I think you've already heard a lot, but just to highlight also that the EU Strategic Compass was adopted in March this year, and it sets out an ambitious plan of bolstering the EU's capabilities as an actor in the field of security and defense. As outlined in the EU strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, presented in September last year, the EU is stepping up its engagement also on security matters in the Asian region. So I believe we have a lot to offer. This Indo-Pacific strategy explicitly emphasizes also maritime security, including through naval presence, which we have seen, I think, recently over the last 6 months from 3 of our member states, maritime capacity building and broadening partnership. And we will do so in close cooperation with our EU member states, as also attested by the involvement in today's forum by speakers from France, Netherlands, and Czechia. So we look forward to further in-depth exchanges and practical security cooperation between the EU and Korea in the future, building on some of the ideas that were presented today. And we will indeed use the EU's project for enhancing security cooperation and in and with Asia to that goal. The EU and ASEAN will build further exchanges with Korean counterparts in the coming month to identify together with Korea what further joint activities can be in our mutual interest. And personally, I would think trilateral cooperation, EU, Korea, ASEAN will be a very fruitful way forward. So finally, let me thank all the policymakers that are here from Korea, all the military and security professionals, as well as all other participants for helping to make this a very successful event. Of course, in particular, I want to thank the colleagues from the French Embassy, from KIMS and from the ASEAN project for their invaluable role in turning this forum today into a reality, and very grateful to the Czech ambassador for announcing today that the Czech Republic will take up the baton and continue to use ASEAN to further strengthen cooperation between the EU and Korea. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you for your excellent closing remarks. And it was, yes, truly a remarkable opportunity to learn from one another, share our accumulated expertise, and share our security focuses as well. Thank you once again for staying with us until the very end. And there will be our official dinner offered at 7:15 p.m. after a short break. In addition, please note that there will be the official receiving by Chairman Chong Ui-sung of KIMS, as well as our French ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Philippe Lefort. So when you enter the dinner hall, please use the main gate instead of the side gate. So thank you very much. This has been Claudia Lee, and I'll see you later. Please enjoy your break.